feeling slightly sick inside, that's all.
Oh.
Just...
Let's go through here.
What cosas me capire?
Hmm?
Don't think I can... Oh, God.
Pretty vast, isn't it?
Oh, just wait and see. Just wait and see. Oh, God, I don't know where bloody hell I am. Now, wait a minute, wait a minute. I can't also find my bearings here. Now, you know one of the reasons you're here, don't you?
What's that?
Well, just look at this terrible emptiness. Just, can you imagine this place full of people?
I can imagine. I can imagine it's in the winter with the snow as well. Are those... That's where the fence used to be? Up there?
Just let me compose myself. Perhaps I've come to speak for all the people who have died, but I've had 30 good years, haven't I? I'll tell you why you're here. It's most important now. Do you know why? Because there are people in this world, they say that this has never happened. They're writing about it. They're saying, oh, this has all been, you know, it's not true. You are here just to see that it is true, it was true. And so that when you have children, you can bring them here and tell them about this. And I owe this to all the people that have died. I'm sure I do. 30 members of your family have died here. Your grandfather, your grandmother, my family, all my school friends.
I know.
Everybody out of our hometown. All your father's family. Everybody's ashes are here, so let's just go and see if we can find something now. I think this is B1. I don't remember coming in through this, no. These railway lines weren't here, you see, in 1943.
Well, do you think they've been put here since?
Oh, yes. I came in the middle of the night, and I didn't come through this gate. I think I came through some side gate, and these are the rails that I helped to build.
And is this where the fences were, is it?
Oh, the fences were. The whole place was lit up when I came here. Yeah. And then there was a kind of smell of roasting meat. And you thought, God, surely there can't be roasting a lot of meat here. And there was a peculiar glow in the distance, and you thought, well, what the bloody hell is this glow? Still, we went on, and as I said, it was the middle of the night. You didn't really know where you were, except for the whole sort of the stench.
What was over there? Were those brick?
I'm trying to find Camp B1, and I think you go through there. Now, these railway lines were built, and they go all the way to the end. And the people came in here, the trains were brought in there, you see, but before that happened, people came along here. They just walked along. Now, where you're walking along here, just imagine, hundreds of thousands of millions of people walked along this road here with their bundles, tiny children, old people, some had to be carried, and they just walked all the way to the end. I haven't got my bearings, but I think this is B1. I think there's got to be a way in here. Just look at it. As far as you can see, you'll see camps, 22 camps. Not just one camp. We're talking about the tiniest, meanest section, which is this. I worked on this railway. Now, the worst thing you could do was working outside. And I helped to build this railway. I actually didn't lay the rails. I carried the cement. That's why my hands are not ladylike, because I carried the cement and carried enormous big stones. And that's where the dogs came and were let loose on you, and that's where I was bitten. You see my scar here, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Anyway, I'd like to be able to find my way in. Now, there's an entrance. There's got to be an entrance. And don't take any notice of the grass, because there was no grass.
Well, what was in such...
All this was mud, just a sea of mud, damp. It was damp in the summer.
And so what's full of snow in the winter?
Thick with snow in the winter, and it was always wet, and your feet were always stuck in the mud, up sometimes as far as to the calf. So this grass has been laid since.
And there was just this one road approaching through.
Well, this was the main road to bring the people to the gas chambers, this very road. David, this was the most important place of all. See this gate?
Yeah.
Let me tell you about this gate. Now, the commandant stood here, the SS women, that's where they stood. People came to work, external work from there, from the camp. 5 o'clock in the morning, the groups went out to work, outside, digging trenches, doing what you like, right? People who went that way never came back, right? So this was the way of life.
That's where it led to the crematoria?
That's the way to the crematoria, right? So here, if you were brought in through this gate, you could live for a bit. But if you went that way, you never lived. That was the end. That was the way to die. And let's go inside. Ah, that was my block. Now then. I often bought myself a place to sleep here, you see. Bought myself with my crumb of bread a place to lie on one of these boards. Because if you didn't, you had nowhere to sleep. You was here. Look at the mud. Just look.
Yes.
That's it, barefoot
and
sometimes.
And it was as dirty as it is up on...
Oh, it was worse, because people couldn't go to the toilet.
There were no toilet facilities.
No toilet. There was a bucket at one end, but you had to fight to get to the bucket, or you had to have permission to use the bucket. And mostly you couldn't use the bucket, so you were lying in your own mess and everybody else's mess, right? Now, it was very easy to lose the desire to live, let me tell you, very easy. So don't be surprised when people gave up, because you live like this for just a few days, without water, without food, and you're beaten all the time, and no change of clothes. And how long do you think you want to live?
Exit up there, that was...
Oh, that was just to let a bit of light in, but no light. It was pitch dark in here at night.
Yes.
1,000 women in here in the total darkness trying to find somewhere to sleep, right? Every night, not just one night. Now, let's just go and see here. Ah. Now then, sometimes there was a bit of water here, but 1,000 women trying for a drop of water. Now, I don't remember this because I never, ever managed to get as far as this. I washed in my urine, David. That's where I washed, you know. And what's more, you had to keep your body clean, because if selections were carried out, you see, the SS came in here, everybody had to get down, strip. And then they looked you over, and if you were dirty and you had some sort of, I mean, if you were too thin, your number was taken down, and you never heard anymore. You know, this was the end. You thought, oh, well, they've just taken your number for some reason. Perhaps you get a flogging. But it wasn't so. A few days later, all the numbers were called out, and you were taken to block 25. Anyway, that's where I lived, David, for 2 years. No, not quite. I'm exaggerating. 1.5 years.
Early in 1944, Adolf Eichmann visited Auschwitz and ordered the camp commandant to prepare for the arrival of even greater numbers of people for extermination. As a direct result of this order, Kitty Hart, by this time just 17 years old, was taken from the women's camp to work in the Canada Commando. Canada was Auschwitz slang for an isolated section of the camp near the gas chambers, where it was said there was an abundance of everything. In reality, it was where the clothes and belongings of Nazi victims from all over Europe were sorted and packed for shipment to Germany.
Now, this is a Canada Commando enclosure here. This was all pretending to be a garden, pretending to be a factory. It was all a pretense, you see, because they didn't want people to panic when they brought them in here. This patch that you see here, this piece of grass, was actually lawn. Along here was a fence. Beyond this fence, along the road, walked the people either to the sauna to live, or they came the other way from the ramp and to the crematorium over there, which is crematorium 4. The people were told to leave all their stuff behind, that they're going to be disinfected, they're going to be taken into the camp.
And they didn't realize what was
Well,
going on?
they thought people were having a bath, a shower, because it said to the showers. Please leave your clothes neatly in a bundle and bundle your shoes together so that they don't get lost. But this was just to help us here to sort out the remains. I don't remember this tree, but at the bottom there was this enormous heap of all the stuff that the people brought. Our job was to get a wheelbarrow full of stuff, take it into one of the working barracks, and everything was sorted out. Yes, well, I think these are the remains of the Canada Commando huts. The toilets were away from the blocks, and we were permitted to use the toilets. Believe it or not, it had a door, and you were, for one thing, you had the privacy to sit on the toilet. Now, this toilet, it was situated somewhere at the back here, and possibly the next block had a toilet too. And this was my very favorite spot, that when I found some jewelry or some gold, I was determined that whatever I find is not going to be handed over to the Germans. I swallowed it. I buried it, not for myself, but first of all to preserve it, because this gold and the jewelry that was found here was very useful to the men, so that they could buy ammunition, because we knew that sooner or later there had to be an uprising and somehow it had to be paid for. Now, David, where you're standing now is the foundation of my block where I actually lived. Now, in front of it here was this tiny little patch of lawn, and that really was lawn. I'm not joking, it was lawn, right? And it was a glorious summer, and I was on night shift, so during the day when I didn't sleep, I sat here on this lawn sunbathing. With all the screams around, with the people walking past, with the chimney smoking, but we lay down here and we were sunbathing. And it was so hot that we were splashing ourselves with water, which we had access to. Somebody went over to the sauna, got a bucket of water, and poured it over, and we were laughing and joking, sunbathing here. Now, you were lying, I was lying here, and I was watching over to this crematorium over there. You saw the SS-men, the extermination squad that did the actual killing. You know, the actual gassing. So now somewhere there was a ladder. You could see it when you were lying here. And up this SS-man climbed up the ladder with a tin of gas, which he had in his hand, and through the skylight, he just dropped in this tin, and then he quickly ran down the step, and off he went. And then a few seconds later, you heard a sort of a muffled sound, and those were people actually suffocating. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it was quiet. And then soon after that, you lay here and you could see actual smoke coming out of the chimney, and those were the very people that were burning.
And the SS men used to pick up the bodies and throw them in the oven?
Oh, no, no. This was done by the prisoners themselves, called the Sonderkommando. And there were, I don't know how many commandos there were, but they were exterminated ever so often themselves. And the 12th Sonderkommando actually blew up this very crematorium that you see here, the remains of. That was blown up while I was here on the 7th of October. And of course we were all implicated, as you know. Yes. And the gold, which we found, helped to buy the ammunition to blow up this crematorium. And do you think I could believe that there were people actually burning in there? I couldn't believe it. Can you believe it?
No,
but people were burning there, and you could hear them scream, but you still couldn't believe it.
What did you think was happening to them?
Oh, I knew, but I made myself believe that I didn't know. I didn't want to know, because if I did want to know, I couldn't have lived one day, could I? Yeah. Now, the next thing was that these bodies were burnt in certain pits. Yeah. At a later stage, during 1944, when all the gas ovens were full up and they couldn't cope with the amount of people being brought in here, they burned bodies, they burned people live in the pits. But at some stage, they burnt the bodies that were, you know, people that were killed off here were burnt in those pits.
Carried out into the pits.
And somewhere here, there must be enormous big pits. Now, let's just see, because I passed these pits, you see, on the way to the camp. And I think I think they might just be down there. Let's just go and have a look. Yeah, I think so. Yes, well, that's a pit, yes. Yes, I'm quite sure. Now, this is where people were burnt alive, David, just believe it or not. Now, if you were brought in here and you would have seen all this beautiful wood, you're seeing it now in the autumn, but in the spring, with flowers all round, girls lying on the lawns there, and perhaps even having some bit of music and laughing, would you think you were going to die in this pit here? It's only when I heard them scream did I realize they were actually burning. So I can't cry over this anymore, I'm afraid. It's just, you know, beyond tears. But it's a graveyard. All this is a graveyard. I think this is a pit too. There must be more pits. There wasn't just one pit. Ashes must be here, but time has taken its toll, and I think the ashes are down here, yes. Look at this. This is ash. Can you see it? This is ashes. Look. These are remains, body remains.
This is bone, all right. Put the trabeculation on the bone. Can you see those?
Well, we shall wash it, and then you will see if it is bone. But I think it probably is, yes. This represents a small proportion of the 4 million. And perhaps your grandparents. Perhaps.
The freight trucks and cattle wagons that had brought so many men, women and children to the gas chambers now began to take surviving prisoners away from Auschwitz. But leaving Auschwitz didn't bring an end to their suffering. They were shunted from one overcrowded camp to another. When there were no trains, they were forced to march over hundreds of miles in conditions of deprivation and brutality worse than anything they had experienced in Auschwitz. Kitty left Auschwitz in a freight truck on November the 11th, 1944. It was 1 month before her 18th birthday. Of the 100 women who were transported with her, only 12 were alive by the time liberation came in April 1945. Amongst those 12 were Kitty and her mother. (1946). After a year of working as interpreters in a displaced persons camp in North Germany, Kitty and her mother set out to create a new life for themselves in England. Of their old life in Poland, nothing remained. In Bielsko, every one of the large and prosperous Felix family had been exterminated. Karl Felix, Kitty's father, had been traced by the Gestapo, arrested and shot. Her brother Robert's attempt to reach England ended in Russia. He was killed fighting with the Red Army at Stalingrad. Kitty's mother would never see Poland again. Instead, she and Kitty, traveling with new papers that still recorded their Auschwitz numbers, came and settled in Birmingham. In 1947, Kitty took up radiography at Birmingham's Royal Orthopaedic Hospital. At the Polish Club, she met Ralph Hart, a Polish emigre who had arrived in England just before the war. In 1949, they were married. In the 50s, there were children, David and Peter. Kitty's mother lived with the family until her death in 1974. She had survived the years on the run and the years in Auschwitz. She had lost one family in Bielsko, but had lived long enough to see another grow up and take root in Birmingham.